Okay. So yeah, like we were just talking about, today's class is on the PTA's price trend analysis. And so I want to talk about why we do it, and then of course how we do it, and how to utilize the forms. Okay. So you may have heard in real estate class or real estate in general that people do CMAs, or comparative market analysis, or competitive market analysis. So CMA is kind of a standard term that's used in real estate, and sometimes it's called a BPO, or broker price opinion. Those are the standard features, but with Weicker we do a PTA. Why? Because it's different. Right? So we want to be different in everything we do, and be better at everything we do. And so there's nothing necessarily wrong with the CMA, but the main difference is with the CMA, you're looking at stuff that is sold in the last 180 days, typically. Maybe 3 comps that have sold in the last 180 days. And then you're typically looking at 3 comps that are currently active. So that's your competitive market analysis. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. That's a good way to find out the value of a property. But with the PTA, we're looking at what has sold a year ago, 12 months ago, 6 months ago, and 30 days. And let me just ask real quick, could somebody tell me if you're seeing this screen correctly, the 12 months ago, 6 months ago?
Yes, we're seeing it.
Seeing it? Okay, great. Thank you. Sometimes it's just hard to tell on my screen what's there or not. So yeah, that's the big difference, right? We're looking at 12 months ago, 6 months ago, and today. Okay. So again, why are we doing it? Well, because we want to be different. And when we're presenting this to other agents, if you're in competition with another agent from another company, it's guaranteed that they're going to be using a CMA to try to come up with a price for the home. And so if you come in, say they're interviewing 3 agents, and you come in with a PTA, you're automatically different. And you'll have sellers say, well, how come yours is a little bit different? Say, well, I'm glad you asked. The reason that we're different is because we want to make sure we're looking at what the trend is of the whole property. With the CMA, you're just really looking at what's going on today, but we want to look at what the trend is of the property. So by saying something like that, you're in a roundabout way throwing the other agents under the bus, saying what they're doing isn't good enough. That's not what we said, but that's kind of the underarching tone of it, which then makes you sound different. You're different. You're better than the other agents. Okay, so that's some of the history behind it on why we're doing it. But let's look at what we're truly, or how we truly have to fill out this PTA. So let's start at the basics. Where the heck do you find this thing? It is an Excel sheet. You're going to find it on Weicker 1, right? We go here to Weicker 1, and we go to our tools and resources. We go into our tools and resources here, and then we should be able to find the PTA. Always use the enhanced version. Like it says here at the top, enhanced PTA calculator. Always use that one, okay? Because I'm going to shut this off because it's starting to skip my computer. So it's in Weicker 1 under the tools and everything, okay? But always use the enhanced version because they have an older version of it that is not the same. Okay, so always use the one that says enhanced PTA version. All right. The cool thing about the form itself is that all the instructions are here in green. So if you forget everything I say, just remember you can always read the instructions and it'll tell you what you need to do. All right, so this page 1. Page 2 is where we fill out our comparables. Again, all the instructions are up here. Page 3, you have the pricing guide explaining what you're looking at and why, the little graph on what market absorption rate means. All right, and then your page that prints out. Right now it's just all zeros. Once we put the information in, it'll show us a nice pretty graph. Okay, so we start off on page 1. put in the property address. It says 123 Main Street. All right, we'll just say that's in Asheville, North Carolina, 28803. It automatically puts the date in there, and then just put in your name, right? Put your name in there. Now, just like we were talking about at the sales meeting, these numbers, you start off with a broad category of criteria for your house. And you don't have to get super specific because we are looking between 20 and 100 different homes, okay? So how do we do that, all right? We go here to the MLS. Let's just say our house is near the office. Let's just say near the office. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,800 square foot house. Okay, let's just go with that. So what I might do is I might say I want to look at starting off with 28805 just to bring it in a little bit. And I'm going to say we're going to try to look at 3 bedrooms for now. I'm looking at numbers of active homes. So I'm going to try to show you what the map feature looks like, because like we said on the sales meeting, we location is the #1 thing, right? Technically, our office is not in 28805. We're in 28803, right? So let's just say our office is right here where the little hand is. So we want to look in that general area. So I'm going to use the freehand polygon. And so I want to use homes that are in this area here. Okay. Now I can go back to my criteria. I can take off the zip code. Take off the zip code, and it shows we got 32 homes that are active. This is an interesting thing because I'm like, well, how are there only 32 homes? Well, that's this part of our market, right? There's just so few homes available. So we got 32 there, 3-bedroom homes. Well, I mean, 32 is not a bad number. I want to make that a little bigger. Maybe I go ahead and do that. I'll go back to my map and I'll draw my polygon out just a little bit more. Include a few more homes. There we go. All right, so now we're at 39. All right, so let's use that. All right, I said 20 to 100. We got 39. All right, so we'll come in here, number of active listings, we'll put 39. Now we need to find the average DOM. DOM stands for days on market. So how do we do that? We hit our results button down here, the bottom left. In the bottom of the screen there, you see a little stats button. And then it says tabular. And it'll pull up the averages of things. All right, so our average days on market is 87. All right, so we're going to put that in here, 87. And then it's important that we don't change the criteria, otherwise it'll skew the numbers. So we just go back. The only thing we're going to change on the criteria is the difference between active and under contracts. So we look at our under contracts. We want to look at the last 30 days. So we go 0 to 30. Okay, that's how the MLS works. You work backwards. So 0 to 30 days ago. How many homes are under contract? 31, right? I'm laughing because, I mean, that's stupid. That's stupid how our absorption rate's going to act here. So we put 31 in here, gives us a 1.3, right? So look at that. I mean, think about that for a second. There are 39 options for a buyer. In that whole area, there are 39 options for a buyer that wants a 3-bedroom home. We didn't even put in price range. There was one in there that was like $2 million, right? We didn't even put in price range. There's only 39 available in that area, 39 homes, and there are 31 under contract in the last 30 days. Crazy. That's what's driving the market and driving the prices up, right? So that's our absorption rate of 1.3. It calculates it automatically, right? So now when we come back here to the pricing guide, it'll show us that 1.3 right here. Okay. So before we move on to finding the actual best 3 to 5 comparables, is there any questions on that page on how to find that? Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. So, and that's pretty easy, right? I mean, it really takes 2-3 minutes to figure that out. It's just finding enough comparables to get the right numbers in there. All right. Now we need to be more specific because now we need to find 3 to 5. So there are 5 blocks in here, but I need you to find at least 3. Don't put 1 or 2 in, minimum 3. If you can find 5, that's all the better because it's just a better average, a better multiplier. Okay. So we want to find the best 3 to 5 comparables. Like Rick was talking about earlier with the land, sometimes you can't really find comparable properties. So how do we deal with that? Well, the best way to deal with it is to find the best you can, and then you have to adjust for some of the items that are not exactly the same. Okay, so we'll talk much more about the adjustments here in just a little bit. All right, because that's a big piece of pricing property. Excuse me real quick. Let's see if we can. Okay. So, all right. So let's find the best 3 to 5. All right. So I usually kind of come back and I start with today. I look at today's first, and then I go 6 months ago and a year ago. Doesn't matter. It's just what works for me. But when you're looking at these, you can find homes that are under contract, pending, not actives, but pending, right? And those that have closed. Now, on all of these, it says past 30 days, past 6 months, past 12 months. You can't come and find homes that have sold 180 days ago and just put in 180 days ago and expect to find enough comps, right? You got to use a range. So when we say 30 days ago, I want to start with 30 days and see if I can find enough good comps. If I can't, I can push that up to 45 days, maybe even 60 days if I want. I won't go past 60 days, but you could push that to find enough good comparables, right? I'd rather have a good comparable that's 45 days old than one that's not good, but it sold in 20 days ago, right? So finding the best comparables is more important than getting exactly correct on the dates. Same thing with 6 months ago. I typically will start with like 150 days ago to 210 days ago and see if I can find enough good comps there. If not, broaden that time out a little bit more. And same thing with a year ago, say 365 days ago. I might start at 300 days and go to 420 or something like that, right? And just see what's available because I'd rather find the best comparables. Okay? All right, so how do we do that? So in our little scenario, we said our house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in East Asheville, 28805. And we said it was what did we say, 1,800 square feet? So I'm going to say square feet. I'm going to want to look from, let's just start with 1,500 to 2,100 square feet. We'll start with that, right? And again, sometimes it's helpful on price. Let's look at, we got 11 matches here. Let's see what we got here. So you see the big range we got from 299 to 650. So let's just say for giggles, we believe our house will be between 350 and 400. We're trying to figure that out, but we believe it'll be somewhere in that range. Okay. So I might say, I'm not interested in anything under 250, and I'm not interested in anything over 450. Okay. So make that range big because the whole purpose is trying to figure out the price, right? So you don't want to say, oh, I want to be between 420 and 425. Like, well, I mean, you're determining the comps. You need to just knock out a couple of the outlying issues. Okay. So now we got 9. 9 is a good number when you can tailor it down to 5 to 15. You can start looking at them, and then you got to use your eyeballs. And this is the difference between the automatic CMA like you can do on the MLS or the Zestimate on Zillow or all of these computer algorithms. The difference is they don't have your brain and they don't have that human intuition. And so when you look at this, you can probably scroll through these homes and know which ones are much better comp for your house just based on the way it looks, right? So let's look at this. We say, oh no, that one's not correct for me, so I'm not going to check it, right? I'm going to scroll back through here. Oh, I don't think that one looks right for me because it's got Ours has 1,800 square feet on one level, right? It's harder when I'm just using a random example that I'm making up in my head. But so let's look at this one though, okay? So this one's got 1,932 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath in East Asheville. Boom, right? Bingo. That's one that we can work with, right? So we'll check that box off. Go find another one, 1,600 square feet. Maybe we'll check that one for now. This is how I'd honestly do it. I don't get super detailed on it yet. I want to just click off and see which ones I think I might want to use, and I'll come back to them later. So this one, I don't think this one looks much like the house that I have in my head, so I'm not going to use that. Maybe I'll check that one for now. That one's in Kenilworth. It's not similar to the house I'm thinking. This one looks pretty good. Let's use that one. It's in Kenilworth as well, though. That one's 1,900 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Yeah, let's use that one. Okay. So now I've got 5 checked. What I typically do is refine those and then retain the ones that I've checked. And I get to that point where I've got 5 that I really like. Okay. So once I have the 5 that I really like, if I'm doing this for real, personally, what I like to do is print out the 5 and then I bring them out in front of me and I make notes on them and then I add and subtract for the adjustments that I might need to make. Okay. Let me pull up a form, and while I'm doing that, let me ask you guys a question. So when you're adjusting, let's just say this one's 1,932 square feet and our comparable is at 1,800 square feet. How much per square foot would you want to adjust, and how would you come up with that number? What do you think? All right, I got to find this form, so we'll be quiet until we find the form. But any ideas on that? Like, would you just do price per square foot? Like, take the price, divide it by the square footage, and maybe it's $200 a square foot?
No, you wouldn't do that. I would take a look and see where the footage is in the entire house. Do I get a larger living room? Is there an extra room that I'm getting? And maybe try to assign some kind of value to that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Your point's valid. So, sometimes 1,400 square feet feels like 1,800 square feet, right? So sometimes just determining how the home flows and how it works is just as important as the square footage. I would agree with that. And again, this is not, if you talk to an appraiser, they would not agree with that. But we're not appraisers. We are realtors trying to figure out the market value for a property. They're different things. Okay. So you got to look at it from a buyer's perspective. Okay. So the form I wanted to pull out here is this one here called the Residential Broker Price Opinion. The reason I wanted to pull it out is because I do like this form as far as making adjustments for things. All right. This is a federal form that's used primarily for foreclosures. So listing thousands of foreclosures in my life, I did this form thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So I got really sick of it, but it is a good form as far as making these adjustments. And the PTA form that we use does not have room for these adjustments, right? It just simply has the MLS number, the address. LD means listing date, okay? UCD under contract date, and then the DOM, days on market, calculates on its own, but it doesn't have room for you to make these adjustments. So I like making the adjustments on the pieces of paper, and sometimes it's just simply using a little notepad or something and writing down a couple different things, but make the adjustments before you enter them into the system, into the PTA. Okay. So back to my question, how do you determine the square footage, what you're going to calculate? I know Rick has heard this before, so he came up with the right answer. No, you wouldn't take 387. Let me just figure out that math. 387,000 divided by 1932, exactly $200 $2,232.31 per square foot, right? So we wouldn't adjust $200 a square foot, because let's say that's 132 square feet difference times 200. That'd be a $26,400 difference. Is there really a $26,000 difference between 1,800 square feet and 1932? Would you pay $26,000 more for that? I wouldn't, right? So why is that? And I know that confuses a lot of people. Well, I don't get why would that adjustment be off? The reason is because of land, right? When you're doing that price per square foot, you're not including the land value that's there. And then there's my own little phrase is called a house is a house is a house. And what I mean by that is, if you have an 1,800 square foot house, you still have a really nice house. 1932, maybe it's better, maybe it's not, just depends on the feel of it. But how much more value is there really in that 132 square feet? Not that much. So the answer is, these days, you want to be adjusting about $30 per square foot. About 30, maybe 40. We're squeaking to that 40 mark, but something like that, okay? And it depends on the property, but let's do that calculation now. So if we took $132 times 30, that'd be $39.60 in the adjustment. So maybe we want to adjust $4,000 or $5,000 for the square footage. That seems more reasonable, right? Seems a lot more reasonable to me. Maybe I'd pay $4,000 more for that square footage. Okay, so that's one of the biggest things that throws people off on your adjustments. So this BPO form that we've got here, I will send it to everybody on this slide. And if you're watching this later and you need it, just email me. But this form is a good one to use when you have a really difficult property you have to make a lot of adjustments on. If not, you don't always have to use the form, but you just make sure you're adjusting for certain items. So the things that you should generally adjust for: square footage, right? Square footage being one. The heating and cooling, if one house has no AC and another house has an AC, I mean, that would be an adjustment. You definitely want to adjust on age and on condition, but be careful there. All right. What if you have a home built in 1920, but it's just been refurbished? Do you really want to adjust that much on age? Probably not, because if all the systems have been updated and the whole house is updated, just because it was built in 1920 doesn't really mean it's worth less if everything's been updated, right? So be aware of, don't just automatically make those adjustments. You got to be aware of what the true condition and that is. At the same time, maybe the house was built in 1920 and nothing's been updated since 1920. You're going to adjust for age, but don't double down, right? And what I mean is maybe your condition's in poor condition. So you're going to adjust a lot on condition, but then don't adjust the same amount on age, because you're kind of doubling down on the same issue. Okay.
Aaron, what adjustment would you make if, say, on your comps that you're looking, one has 0.25 acres and one has 0.75 acres? How would you make an adjustment on that?
Is it a house or just land?
No, it's a house. You're looking at your comps here,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make adjustments, and one has like a 1/4 acre lot and the other one has a 3/4 acre lot. How does that factor in?
Right. So again, there's other variables there, right? So we think about, what does the land look like? Is it an extra 1/2 acre of flat pasture land, or is it an extra 1/2 acre of steep wooded, you'll never be able to walk on the land without dying land, right? So it varies. It still varies based on what kind of land it is. So I still can't answer that question without seeing the property and looking at it all that way. But generally, let's say they're very similar and it's fairly usable land. I would look at what is selling in that area and have to determine if you can find a comp that was a house that sold at 0.75 acres and you find another comp that was at 0.25, like what was the difference there in price, and kind of weigh that out. But the answer to all of these kind of questions on how much to adjust, the answer is always, what would you pay? What would a buyer pay for that difference? And no, you don't know what every buyer's thinking, but you have your own opinions, and they're generally pretty correct, right? So if you would pay 20,000 more for that extra half acre, then chances are another buyer would as well. In general, let's just say the house is in Mars Hill, Rick, and it's, you know, fairly usable land, you know, but it's got some trees and stuff on it, but it's nice little land. I mean, maybe 15, 20,000, you know, is kind of what my gut would tell me. But if that's a half acre in downtown Asheville that could be subdivided into 4 lots, it might be worth 200,000. So it just depends. So that's not the answer you asked for, but the answer I think is, what do you think a buyer would pay for it? And that's probably the amount to adjust for.
But you would make some small adjustment.
Yeah, I would.
Depending if they were both, like you said, the example you used, one, they were both flat, one was 1/4 of an acre and the one was 3/4 of an acre, and both yards were perfectly flat, then you would make some kind of adjustment.
Yes, I would.
Okay.
And off the top of my head on that example, I'd probably say 15, 20,000.
Okay.
Would be my number on that. Right. So
thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, because that's a hard one. Like, you know, you got to kind of see the land and feel it out. But again, that's the answer to all of these questions. How much more would you pay as a buyer for the adjustment? So one of the big things is garages, because we have tons of homes that have garages and we have tons of homes that don't have garages. And it's kind of weird, because when you go around the country, in a lot of areas, like nobody has a garage or everybody has a garage. So in Western North Carolina, it's halvesies. So how much do you adjust for that? So let's just think about it. Like, say you have a 1,800 square foot house, good house, no garage, and then you have a comparable that is 1,800 square foot house with a 2-car garage attached to it. How much more would we adjust for that? What do you think? I mean, I don't have an exact answer. I have my opinion, but what do you guys think? How much would you adjust for that? Everybody's on mute.
Say around 5 to 8 grand at least.
5, 8 grand. Okay. Anybody say more than that?
I think it would depend if it's a 2-car garage with one 16-foot door, or it's a 2-car garage with 2 9-foot doors. That makes a huge difference to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It still varies, right? Well, how much would it cost to build a 2-car garage? I mean, it could vary a lot as well, right? But maybe $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Generally, right now, if we've got a 2-car garage, I'm going to adjust at least $20,000, because I feel like buyers would pay that. I know I would. If I had a house with no garage, or I could have one with a 2-car garage, would I pay $20,000 more for that house? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. And maybe you wouldn't. But just think about generally, what would a buyer be willing to pay for it? So how much for a 1-car garage? Like right now, I'd be adjusting $7,500, $10,000 for a 1-car. And to Rick's point, absolutely, you can have these garages that are made by car guys that have the, you know, concrete, epoxied, pretty floors and an oversized 2-car garage, and it might be worth $50,000, $60,000. Absolutely. It just depends. But generally speaking, for a normal garage, I'd probably be adjusting $20,000 to $30,000. And I think that's backed up. If you go look at enough comps and look at enough houses, you will find homes that have 2-car garages, homes that don't, and you'll see the difference. And it generally comes out to $20,000, $30,000 difference. So if you're a builder, this is why you don't see a lot of garages in our area, by the way. If you were a builder and it's going to cost you $40,000 to build that garage, but you might only get $30,000 more on the price, why would you build it? Okay, that's why you don't see a lot of them here. Now, if you live in Minnesota, how much would you pay for a garage when it gets -10 for 2 months straight? Right? You pay a lot more. That's why you go to Minnesota, you will find every house that has a garage that's heated. Right? I remember being at my grandmother's house in Minnesota and walking out of the garage and spitting and watching it crash on the ground. The spit becomes ice before it hits the ground, right? You can't drive in that crap. So again, depends on where you are, what you're doing, but what would a buyer pay for it is generally what you're looking at. All right, another big one to adjust for is basements. So it's the same scenario. Everything's the same. How much more would a buyer pay for it? How much more would you pay for it? But let's say we have 1,800 square feet and it's got an unfinished 1,800 square foot basement. How much more would we pay for that? I don't know. Generally speaking, though, I'd be looking at making that adjustment of $20 to $30 per square foot. It'd be worth an unfinished basement. So, adjusting, let's figure this out. So $20 a square foot would be $36,000. Would I pay $36,000 more for a house that has 1,800 square feet unfinished? I would, 1,000%, yes. Right? Would every buyer? Maybe, maybe not. But you just have to look at, we're only looking for one buyer for each house. So you have to adjust based on what you think the market would bear for that. So generally speaking, on something like that, I would adjust $20 to $30 a square foot for the unfinished basements. Now the finished basements, pretty much are going to count those as square footage out here because almost every basement out here is a walkout basement, right? Not all, but almost all. So when they're walkout basements, most people around here treat them as regular square footage. So if it's finished, it's part of the house, it's in the basement. I know an appraiser is going to look at that a little bit different, but I generally would count that the same as other square footage. Okay. All right. Let's see other adjustments again. Okay. So on condition, huge difference, right? If you got a house built in 1960, has 1960 bathrooms, 1960 kitchen, versus a house built in 1960 but has been updated on the bathrooms, updated on the kitchen, huge difference, right? So how much difference? Well, again, I don't know, how much would a buyer pay for it? The standard answer, but you got to kind of figure out what it would cost to make those repairs to bring the house up to the same level as the other one, and then multiply that by about 30–40%. You can't say it's going to cost me. People do this on repair negotiations all the time. They say, well, we've got all these issues, it's going to cost $10,000 to repair all these things, so we'll offer you $10,000. Well, how much is my time worth? Right? So if it's going to cost $20,000 to update the kitchen, it's not worth $20,000 less. It's probably worth more like $30,000 less because of the time, the effort, the pain in making it happen. So when you're adjusting for some of those issues, think about what you believe it would cost to make those kind of repairs, and then multiply that times, maybe 130, 140%. Okay? And generally speaking, that'll bring you to a realistic adjustment. And if you're saying, I don't really know what stuff costs to repair, well, talk to your colleagues in the office. You can ask me. I'm not a contractor, but I've been around enough. I have a pretty good idea of what stuff costs to repair. Talk to your other colleagues in the office. We've got some other contractors and builders and stuff in the office. They can be a good resource for you on those kind of things. All right. The last thing let's talk about on adjustments is views. So in Western North Carolina, we got a lot of homes that have views. How much is a view worth? I always like asking this question. So, what do we got? Five people, including myself, on this call right now. Raise your hand or put a thumbs up on the screen or something if you would buy a house for a view, pay more, significantly more for a house with a view. Raise your hand. Okay, I can't see Rick and Jackie, so I don't know, but at least we got three. Jackie, what would you say?
In the class I took before with you, we had this discussion. For me, having a stream and having privacy is more important. But a view would be a bonus. But I would pay more for a stream and privacy.
Sure. Okay. Okay, that's kind of a view. Same idea, right? That's the thing. Like if you have a house that's got this great 180-degree view, when you work with enough buyers, you'll find out that some buyers will walk into that house and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I got to buy this house because of that view." And then you'll have other buyers walk into the same house and you'll be like, "Hey, did you see that view?" They're like, "Yeah, yeah, it's nice. I don't care." Like, what? Now, it seems like Tom and Shaniqua and I raised our hands saying that's what we would be looking for. And I have been in the past a views guy. I like homes with views. And my house in Arden, I bought for the view. I walked in, I saw the 180-degree view of Mount Pisgah and the whole range, and I said, my house. I want it. That's my house, right? So to me, a view is worth a lot. In fact, I still own that house and rent it out now, but if I were to go to sell it, I would probably add $100,000, maybe more, because of that view. And is that an accurate number? Probably not, because not everybody would be willing to pay that for the house, right? And realtors are the worst appraisers for their own house, myself included, right? That house is worth so much money to me because that view is so amazing, but certainly not everybody would see that. So how much is a view worth? Well, again, we're only looking for one buyer for the house. So you got to think, and if you're not a views person, if you're like, I don't really care, it's nice, but I don't really care. Okay, but think if you did, like how much would you maybe adjust for that buyer who really, really wanted that view? And think of how much you would adjust for that. And certainly the views vary as well, right? Truly, okay, it was my house, but still, it really was an amazing view. 180-degree view of the whole valley of South Asheville and the mountain range and everything. Huge view. Other times people say they have a view, and to get the view, you have to look through the trees, over the neighbor's house. Like it's not truly a great view. So it depends on what kind of view it is, but generally speaking, it's that old, how much more would a buyer pay for it? For a really, really great view, I do think you can adjust between $50,000 to $100,000. I really do, at most price ranges. Higher price ranges, that number would get bigger. Lower price ranges, maybe a little bit smaller. Okay, but again, I know it's a broken record, but it does keep coming back to, well, what do you think you would pay or a buyer pay? Okay. All right. So when we're making those adjustments, you got to go through all of those different things. And some are easier than others. Like sometimes you get lucky and you've got great comps that are very similar homes, maybe built by the same builder. And like life's easy. You can just boom, 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 put in your comps, no problem. You don't have to make much adjustments or any adjustments. That's fine too. If the comp's really close, you don't have to make any adjustments. Okay. But again, you go through, you find all the right comparables, and you make all your adjustments before you put them in here. All right, so let's say we find some comparables. How do we enter them in here? Well, again, we got to find their list date and under contract date. So let's go back here to the MLS. Let's say we're using this one. Here's our MLS number up here, right? And you come down to the bottom, marketing date is list date. So LD means MKTD, okay? So list date, marketing date, same thing. And then your under contract date. In this case, it was 8/14 and 8/16. So you'd put that information into here. List price and sold price. You look at the top here. This one's only under contract, so we put 387. And on these, it's fine. You just put 387 in here, and you don't have to put in anything under contract date. I'm sorry, sold price, excuse me. Sold price, list price, sold price. Okay. But for some of these others, let's see what we got here. All right, so this one's closed. You got your list price and sold price. In this case, list price was 335, sold price was 355. Sold 20,000 more than asking. Okay. You should also look down here at the bottom. It says seller contributions. Those are like buyer paid closing costs or things like that. So we should knock off 1975. So we should take 355 minus 1975. That's your actual sold price. And then when you're making adjustments, I know you guys went over this in real estate class, but when you're making adjustments, if you do some adding, you do some subtracting, and it goes back and forth. But say we ended up with this house is less than our subject house, then we would be adding to the price of this, right? So if this is less than, then we might end up with 365 here, right? And when you put the numbers into the PTA, you have to adjust both numbers, the list price and the close price. So let's say we ended up with a plus $10,000 on this one. So we go 345,000 and 365,000 are what get entered into here. Does that make sense? All right, these green, anything in green here will automatically calculate. All right, so like if we put in the 8, 14, 20, 20, then we go 8, 16, 20. It gives us our two days, and say our list price 335, sold price 355, give us 106%, right? So it's showing all of that data. All right, so we go back through, we try to find the best 3 to 5 for each of those. Try to use 5 if you can, it gives you a better average of things. Use the reasonable test. And what I mean is, if everything in here is, 335, 340, 320, and then the last one is like 480, well, that's not a good comp. You use a reasonable test on it, and if the numbers just aren't matching, aren't mixing well, just erase that comp and find a new one. Okay. So once you enter all that data in here, like you can start seeing the data get entered in here, you'll have all of it listed here just like this, and then you'll have this graph. So I'm going to try to pull out of this and pull up a different PTA that's done so we can look at that. Any questions so far while I'm pulling this up? Anything at all? Okay. Let's see. I think this is a PTA that we had done. Just remember though, on the adjustments, to look at that as closely as you can and try to make sure you're using the right addition and subtractions, because I've gotten caught with that several times. I'm like, I don't understand why this comp seems off, and you realize, oh, I was subtracting when I should have been adding. Simple math can get in the way a lot. Okay, so when we're done, now we should have the page 2 look something like this, right? In the current market we're in, again, using the reasonable test, I know that the prices have gone up for this particular property, and my data is showing that, right? The sold prices a year ago, 665, 677, now it's 690, right? So that makes sense. So again, use your intuition to make adjustments and think, something's off here. Let me go back, check my data. Don't just blindly enter the data, okay? So in this case, it pulled out the graph, and this is the page that prints. Just this last page is the only page that prints. It pulled out a price, a future price of 705 to 722, right? And showing that based on the current market absorption rate, if we waited to list it, it would continue to rise. Just so happens this house is now closed, and guess what price it closed for? 725, right? It closed at 725 because the market caught up to it, and we ended up closing at 725. So this PTA ended up being quite accurate, right? Really quite accurate. But why did we list a little bit higher? I think we listed at 729, if I remember correctly. Why did we list it a little higher? Because the trend, right? The trend is telling us you can go ahead and list a little bit higher. Shouldn't list it at 880, right? Like it shows up here. Don't do that. But we could list it a little bit higher to try to catch the market. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Now that it's closed, we can say that, right? All right, so one other thing. Once you get to this page, this graph does not adjust on its own. You have to adjust the graph yourself. It's one of the harder things to do. It's not hard, you just have to know how to do it. So here's how you do that. On a Mac, it's a little bit different. So I'd have to show you on the Mac. But for here, you just got to hover over the little graph, and I'm going to right-click on that, and it pulls this up. I'm going to format the plot area, and it pulls this up on the side. I want to get to the vertical value axis and my axis options, and then I can change my graph. All right, I know it's a lot of little steps there, but I can show you when you need to. But say you wanted to adjust it from 400, you could do that, right? And say, no, I want that to be more like 640. I can do that, and then I want my major lines to be at $50,000. So it gives me fewer lines in there. So that's how you adjust it, okay? You got to get to the axis options. All right, and the other little quirk that I've learned, a lot of times this is the last thing we do, and then we go to print. But you see how this is highlighted here? If we go to print right now, it's only going to print this. So it's just a little thing, stupid, but you just got to click it so that comes off, and now we can print it, and the whole thing will print out. Okay, just a couple little things that I see a lot of issues with. Let's see. So using the PTA, that's how you use this form. Is this the only pricing thing you should do for the property? Probably not. You should do more than this. You should go ahead and pull all kinds of other data and stats, and go ahead and print some of the other active properties that are comparables for them so they can see what their competition is. You should pull out some of that other data as well and create that pricing packet. So what should go into a pricing packet? Well, number one, your summary should be the PTA, right? Your PTA should be the final summary of, yeah, looking at this, it looks like the values between 705, 722. Let's list at 729. Maybe we can catch the market, make you a few extra bucks, which, as it happened, exactly what happened here, okay? But that's your summary. What I like to do is use the RPR data and stats because it's a whole lot of data and information. I'll show you that in just a second. And then also put in the actual MLS sheets from all of these homes. You know how earlier I said maybe print these out, make your notes on them, do your additions and subtractions? Put in the packet all of that stuff with the notes on it. Why? Well, because it's easier to explain to them. And it's like, you know, like my son's in like this math class now, and he's always upset because he comes up with the right answer, but he doesn't show his work. And he's like, dude, you got to show what you're doing, you know? Same thing here. Show your work. Show that you've put in the effort. Show everything that you've done so it looks more impressive. And more importantly, when they argue with you about the price and they say, no, actually, I think we should be here, you can show them, here's what the market is saying. This isn't Aaron's opinion. This is what the market is saying. And here's my adjustments. Here's the comparables. Here's the information. Argue with the information. You're not going to argue with me. Here's the information. All right, so show them all that. Put all the MLS sheets in the packet. Let's take a look at some of the other things that you should put in there. So on the MLS, I also like to put the tax records in there, maybe even a GIS map or something. Not always, but sometimes I like to do that. The other two little features that you have access to for free in the MLS are RPR under resources here, right? Resources. You scroll down and you've got RPR, Realtor's Property Resource, and then SAM, your Statistical Analysis Module. Let's look at SAM. I love SAM. SAM is awesome because with SAM, you can easily create great graphs that prove your point. Okay. So pull this up and take a look. Now, when I look at graphs and charts for a listing, sometimes the data doesn't always support the exact position that I'm trying to make. Sorry, I guess I was logged in for too long here. And so if you pull up a graph and it doesn't make the point you were trying to make, then simply don't use it. You know, I jokingly call it playing CNN with it. Like if the data doesn't match what I'm trying to make, I'm just not going to show it to you. You know, or you can call it playing Fox News or whatever else you want to call it, but they all do it, right? They only show you the data and the stats that prove the point they're trying to make. Well, essentially that is what we want to do here. So if for some reason some graph is just an oddball, it's not showing you what you're trying to say, then don't use it. All right. So just my 2 cents there. But all right, so we're looking at our little fake house, right, in East Asheville. So maybe we want to say, let's take a look at 28805, zip code, single family homes. And then just like this, we can say, here's the median sales prices. Here's what the prices per square foot have been doing. Here's pending sales, number of pending sales, average days on market, median days on market. See the differences here. This is always a good stat I usually print off both the median and the average. So the median is right at like 25, but the average is 52. I like to print those off and show them. See, and this is the point. If you just want to be on the market and we want to push the price and everything, we should expect 52 days on market as the average. But if we do the right things on the condition and we price it correctly, we should expect maybe just 25 days on market. Does that make sense? So you're showing them, look, if you price it right, you're going to be on the market a lot less. Same point. Shows depending. Median, 16 showings before it goes under contract. Average, 20. So does this stat matter to mother with kids on nap times? Yep. Does it matter to an elderly couple that's hard for them to leave for each showing? Yep. So showing them some of this data can really help them make better decisions on how to price the home. Looking at the month supply, you know, this is again for all 28805 homes. So you can show them what that looks like. Again, this is over 3 years. We can change it to 1 year. We can put it into a bar graph. You see how easily you can make cool looking graphs and stuff. You can compare it. You can say, I want to go back to my line graph. I want to look at the last 3 years, rolling 12 months or monthly, right? That makes a difference as well. Rolling 12 or monthly. And say, I want to compare that to all of Asheville. Single family homes, right? So now I can see 28805 versus all of Asheville. So whatever point you're trying to make, you simply make your little graphs, print them out, put those in your pricing packet. Have 3 or 4 or 5, depending on who you're talking to, right? If they're an engineer, if they're a mindset of data, information data, then more and more and more. If they're like me, 1 or 2 is fine. I'm good with 1 or 2. Make your point, and let's move on, okay? But I'd always have a couple of these kind of graphs in there, okay? And then the other thing that you should always use is RPR. Now, I will say I would not use RPR without adjusting a lot of things and manipulating the PDFs, and I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. Because RPR does come up with its own value of a home, and I don't like using that. We're not trying to do that. Okay. Let's use that one angler trail. All right, so you can type in any address. Has anybody not seen RPR before? Everybody's seen it? Okay. You haven't? Okay. Okay. So yeah, it's in there for you to use under resources, RPR. And then it pulls up their RVM, which is like their Zestimate, right? So it pulls that up. So that's all fine and dandy, but here's what I like about it. You can create a report, and I like to use the seller's report. I don't, it's like it's already remembered me. I don't like using any of their comps, so I take all of those off. And then I hit run report. And this will take just a minute or two. But then it'll pop up and it will help create all this cool data and stuff that we can use, and these great features and graphs and things. And let me see if I have an example of that. For that property, one I've changed. Oh, here it is, finance packet. Let's pull up this one. So this one I've changed a little bit. So on the front, I just like to put my own picture on there, change the front. When that other one pops up, I'll show you what that looks like if you don't change it. But that to me looks a little bit better. And then see, I've got a couple of graphs in here like we were just showing on the RPR, trying to make the point. I got my PTA in here. And then I like to adjust this page. That doorbell is our thing being ready. But then it gives you these other graphs, right? Shows property history, seller's report, market activity for 28803, other data and stats. Stuff looks pretty cool, right? Does it look like I spent hours putting that together? Yeah, I didn't. All I did is click a button, just like we just heard on the doorbell, right? So I like putting all that stuff in there. And again, depends on who you're talking to, because, and then I've got some of the comparables and stuff, right? So like I was saying, for me, if you're selling to me, I just need you to show me that PTA, show me the comparables, show me a couple of pieces of data about what's going on. That's all I need to see. But other people that think differently, that think more analytically, need to see all those graphs and charts. And again, it's not, if they think their home is worth 650 and you're showing them 720, they're going to be thrilled, right? They're going to be thrilled. But what if you're thinking 720 and they're thinking 800? You think they're just going to take your word that they should take $80,000 less? No, you're going to have to prove to them why. Okay. And that's what this stuff is here for. All right. So again, just like I was showing you, you click in and then all this data pops up, just that simply. But then the difference between that one that I had finished and this one, if you notice, is like this automatically prints out, and I don't really like it. So I can just erase that using a PDF editor and change all that language, or just skip the page altogether. I like the little page they have here. I just don't like this font. If I have that other one still available. Yep. Let me show you the difference. Where did I put it? All right, see that font difference? Personal preference, but I just like that font a little bit better. And then I erased some of this stuff down here compared to, where the heck is it? Here it is. It's got like, you know, just kind of weird data and information in here. My fax number twice for some reason, I don't know. But I just like, you know, just adjusting some of that. You could, of course, make whatever other cover sheet you want. I've just gotten in the habit of using those. So using the PTA, pricing the property correctly, and then putting together a good finance packet like that will help you tremendously. Do you know what most real estate agents will do when they go to list a property? And I'm not joking, and I'm not trying to put anyone down, but most real estate agents will show up with a couple of printouts of some recently solds, a couple of printouts of a couple actives, and just have a conversation with people. But they list property doing that way. So why don't we want to do that? Well, if you were to do that, guess what happens when they want 800 and you're thinking 720? It becomes you versus them. It becomes your opinion versus their opinion. And I don't know about you, but it's really hard to change people's opinions. So I want to show them the data, and it's never Aaron's opinion. It's always, this is what the market is showing. This is what the data is telling me. This is what the buyers are seeing out in the market. So it's always the market, the market, the market. It's never my opinion. This is what the market's showing. And if you show the data and you have a packet, you look prepared, they're like, dude knows what he's talking about. And really, a lot of this, I mean, we're talking about it and we're playing with it, and it still only took us an hour, right? I mean, most of the finance packet stuff you can get together in 15, 20 minutes. Maybe the PTA takes a little longer, maybe it doesn't, depending on the property. But it doesn't take that long to put together a solid finance packet for someone. And then it also gives you the confidence, like, yeah, I really do know what this property should sell for because I've put forth the effort in doing it. But it shouldn't take 3 and 4 hours. Maybe it takes an hour, hour and a half on hard properties. Like, that's it. That's all it takes. Okay. All right. Any questions at all on pricing, PTAs, adjustment issues, anything like that?
Aaron, I showed a home last week, and we went into it, and we looked at 2 similar homes, and one that we went into had hardwood floors. We looked at all the baseboards, the molding, all of it looked absolutely brand new. Got to the kitchen, it had granite countertop, stainless steel appliances, and all. How much value do you give to that compared to a similar home that has maybe carpet, needs a little touch up on the baseboards, and then when you get to the kitchen, it's laminate counters? And I know that all that's subjective, but how much do you try to assign a value to something like that?
Yeah, and not to be snarky about it, but how much do you think a buyer would pay for it? Right? I mean, that's kind of the answer. So, I mean, generally, what general price range were we looking at?
This was in Hickory, so we're in the 250 range.
Okay. I mean, in general, I'd say it's probably worth 25, 30,000 more.
Okay.
You know, have all, you know, the kitchen updated and good flooring and things like that. It's probably worth 25, 30. And I asked
Okay.
about the price range because obviously it does matter, right? I can't add $50,000 on a house that's worth 150, and I
Right.
can't add $50,000 on a house that's 2 million. Like, it's going to be a significantly bigger gap. So that's why I asked that. But on that kind of normal, quote unquote, price range, I mean, probably that 20 to 30,000 range is right. You
Okay.
know? And you'll see that by looking at the comparables. You'll see the differences on what things had sold for. That you look at the pictures and you're like, dang, that looks really nice. And you see that, oh, this one's sold at quite a bit less, and you see, oh, I see why now. Like, you can start, and the more you stare at, the more you look on the properties that really have a hard time pricing. The more I stare at it and the more I scroll through the comps, it just starts coming to my head, and you start realizing, yeah, it's worth this, because data starts going through, and you start realizing where the value is. So
Okay.
just keep staring at it. If you're having a hard time with something, keep staring at it, and it tends to become more and more clear.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. All right, guys, we'll end there. If you have any other questions, let me know. And I will send you that BPO form as well for reference if you want to print that out and work with that from time to time. And yeah, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, you're welcome.